What you got, Nick?
I think it's the distributive property.
Nick says distributive property, and he is, ladies and gentlemen, not even close. Which would tell me what? We probably need to review that property thing. Anybody else got an answer for me on that? Anybody going once, going twice? Is this the one right here? Problem number 12? Which then would lead us to, oh, how come I can't make this bigger? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Can I not zoom in? Can I not write on this? Oh, I have to do this, though. Did it take a picture? There it is. Sorry, number 12. Hananuza, the commutative property. I'm glad you said that because you also are incorrect. Now, that would be the reason we would right now take out your piece of note paper and write on top of it properties. I'm glad you're at least getting some properties here. And I will give you the properties of math in very short form because this is a review. Let me just throw at you, Lauren, I'll get you in just a second. Let me just throw at you the different properties that I want you to think about. We had the distributive property, right? Somebody said. And Hannah, you said the commutative. Okay. Other properties we have, well, there's the zero properties, which this obviously isn't. Lauren, the associative property. And you should, we're just going to talk about these three right now because these are the main ones there. If you just look at the words by their names, you will be able to figure these out pretty easily. Okay, I can see why Nick said the distributive property because one of the things about the distributive property is that there are parentheses. Okay, but the distributive property comes from that word distribute, which means when you see that parenthesis, like 3 times x plus 6, that means you multiply or distribute that 3 out and you get 3x plus 18. Remember, what else did we call that last year? Remember? That's when we called it expanding. You remember that? Everybody has trouble with factoring and expanding. Well, notice what happens in the distributive property is you start with parentheses, but when you end up, they go away. Okay, so this is not the distributive property. Okay. The commutative or the commutative property comes from the word commute. What does it mean to commute? Your parents commute to work, they drive, they go. In the commutative property, numbers move. Okay, and if you look at these numbers here, they have not moved. They're in the same order. The commutative property says this, 3 plus 6 is the same thing as 6 plus 3. The numbers have changed orders. You don't necessarily have parentheses. You could have parentheses, but you don't necessarily want it. With the associative property, children, okay, that comes from the word associate, okay, which should mean which ones do you group together? Who do you associate with? Who do you group together? In the associative property, the numbers stay in the same order. They stay in the same order. It's just the parentheses that move. The parentheses change. So in this case here, this is the associative property because the digits are all 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5. The only thing is changed is which two you associate first together. Shabam. See, look at you've already. This, by the way, was day number 2 last year. So what does that tell you, Jim Flores? How many people knew that? That was the associative property. Really? Funny how they didn't,
After the reverse.
funny how they didn't show up right off the bat there. Any other ones that you see on there that you might want, before I tell you that? Any other ones on there that you are unclear about that you would like a little refresher course before I say go ahead and just do this? For example, problem 15. Use the associative and the commutative properties to make the calculation easier. Now you could do this as it is, but what would make it easier to do? And by the way, this is some upper level math stuff. Take a look at this. If you've got this 6 times 14 times 5. Multiplying 14 times 5 and then multiplying by 6 is not the easiest way to do it. You can do it that way, but because of the properties of math, you can change the things to make it the easiest thing. For example, the first thing, Emma Haynes, you might do is?
Flip on 6 over 5 and 6. And not 14.
Well, before you do that, what's the first thing you have to do really? Is you need to flip-flop these two. In other words, do the commutative property. So it would look like this. Okay? You can change their order. That would be the commutative property. Then the associative property says that you can switch the parentheses. So now it's 6 times 5 times 14. And that would be the associative property. That's a lot like proving things in geometry, when you get to do that way. Lucas Esmanuel?
Can you just do the commutative property and choose the 6 with 14?
Well, but then the parentheses, well, yeah, I suppose you could have. I suppose so, but it said to use both of them. So I was just going with the book there. Lauren?
For number 14, is it like what two numbers have an absolute value of 5? Is that adding or is it multiplying?
Well, what does absolute value mean?
But it's,
What two numbers? If I said if you put a number in for x, what two numbers will give you that? For what does absolute value do? Just makes it positive. So the first one is obvious. 5 already is positive, so it stays 5. So, but the second one would be -5, because the absolute value of the -5 is also 5. You good with that? Everybody happy? I'm looking at anything here. Does anybody see any other ones? No? Lucas, you got another one that you think might give you trouble? No? Alright, well then I'm gonna let you get going on it. That will be for tomorrow. There's only, what, 18 to do it right now. Did you what? Somebody asked what?